very few kind of complimentary things about that. But anyway, so yeah, so
it's made a lot of people a lot of money.
Of course, and that's what most people are interested in, right? I think. Show me the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think when money is the
driving force.
When it's the driving force, I think from most people's point of view, we would all say that when you know you're around somebody and you're talking to somebody and you know that their driving force is money, integrity diminishes. Yeah. And we all know that. Like, no, I despise being sold to. Like, if I walk in a shop, someone comes over immediately. Can I help you, sir? No, I'm just looking.
But there's a difference between English people and Americans.
Exactly.
Americans say,
it's cultural.
Americans get offended if you don't do that.
Exactly. See, I get offended if somebody comes over to me.
Yeah.
It's up
it's like if I wanted something,
it's to me to come over to you and say, I need help.
Yeah.
I don't need you to treat me like a child and ask me if I need help.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. So, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't been as popular in the States as I have been in Europe, and because I am much more about the soft sell. You know, if you need something, come to me and I'll ask you and I'll help you with it. Whereas in the States, it's all about me. You know, it's
well, yeah, but I mean, it's only I guess maybe even a topic of discussion because it has a contrast. It is because it is contrasted to say Europe.
And South Africa and
it's
Australia and
expected
New
to
Zealand, Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah. Because I remember when we met, so we're already live because it's much better to go live in the middle of something than have a big formal kind of thing. So this is Brett. We met in Madeira on a job, really, you could call it a job, a presenting, teaching job this year. So I know Brett very little, and he's here. So
it's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So I think that the best thing for me to do is just get your website up on here. And that is your website. Is that your website?
It's my website.
But that's not the image that is the first image of your website, is it?
It's on a rotation.
There it is. That's got your name on it. There you go. So I think you should just explain to people who you are, what you do, and everything else.
Well, I'm more well known for my wedding photography, which has quite a strong fashion influence, and that really stemmed from being a catalog photographer, clothing catalog. For about 15 years I was shooting every summer, every winter, you know, doing clothing catalogs for some really cool brands, Quicksilver, Roxy, Wonderbra, Playtex, loads of clothing, loads of clothing brands. And what happened whilst I was working with these really experienced models was I would notice how they would move and how they would pose, and I took my experience from shooting in the fashion industry or the clothing industry, and I started to, almost by osmosis, it started to trickle into my wedding work. And I found that there was a demand for fashion-inspired wedding photography, and that's what I do really now. So in terms of being, you know, my popularity as a photographer really is more the weddings side of things. And then in 2007, 2008, I started teaching. I started educating other photographers, primarily to earn extra money. You know, the photographic industry is continually evolving, and there is a demand for good quality photographic education. And I've found that I really enjoy doing that. So right now, I am a full-time professional photographer, and I teach as well. So
what's the ratio in percentage?
I would say 50-50 now.
Right.
Yeah. There's a really good friend of mine in New York, a guy by the name of Anthony Friend. He's a South African photographer now living in New York, and he was telling me about how in Japanese theater, when you get to a certain age, I think it's 41, I'm not sure, but it's like quite a random number, that you're obliged to pass on your knowledge to people that are entering the industry.
Right, okay, yeah.
And for me, it coincided very nicely with what was happening in the photographic industry at the time. And I also grew up a little bit. I became a bit more mature. When you first start out and you learn things about photography, you like to retain all that information. You don't share it.
Of course.
But then you get to a stage where you don't feel insecure anymore.
Yeah.
And you know that by sharing your knowledge, in fact, you are elevating the entire industry, which means that you're also being elevated. So I think the days of keeping information to yourself are over.
Well, I think there's the environment that would cause you to think that, like when you call it the days.
Yes.
But it's also a personal thing too. It's a personal trait. You're either, you know what I mean? It's like whether you're secretive and you want to keep it to yourself to your own advantage, or whether you want to share and spread it. I always used to think in my early days of teaching or being a consultant that if I every day keep going out teaching what I know, am I not going to teach myself into extinction? Do you know what I mean? Am I not going? This was my fear. My fear was that I would raise the bar.
Yes.
To the point where I wouldn't be needed anymore. But never did I realise that that was never going to happen, and actually the opposite is true. And because no, it is in your world actually, because the flash stuff that you was telling me today is that the technology does more and more and more of the thinking for us, and we don't have to. So your average user is required less to think, less to learn, and is more dependent on the kit.
Yeah, it's democratized photography. Exactly.
So, and in my part of it too, because you're very strictly a photographer, right?
Yes.
You don't do your own processing, so you would be quite a rare beast on that level.
I grew up shooting film.
Yeah.
So it was always handed over to somebody else to do the processing. It was their
job to do that.
So it was their job to do that. So when the transition came from film to digital, I didn't know how to do the processing myself, and I just automatically got somebody else to do it. Also, that's not what I'm best at. I need to focus on my business in terms of what I'm good at, and outsource what I can, because it doesn't make sense that I would assume that I'm the best at everything. So it's not only post-production that I outsource. I outsource everything in my business that I'm not the best at, which is pretty much the photography side of things, and the marketing. I was a policeman before photographing.
This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that we don't digress too much, because I want people to know where you started.
Okay.
Okay, so you need to go right back.
I need to go back to the
beginning. Okay, I'm going to start. How did you become a photographer, Brett?
Well, that's an interesting question. Okay, so 1990, when I left school back in South Africa, obviously during apartheid, Nelson Mandela was released in the February of 1990.
Oh wow, so when I was watching on the BBC news him walking down the street coming out of prison, it was at that time?
Yeah, absolutely.
At that time. Wow.
I had joined the police force through conscription, through military service. All white males were forced to go and do military service. There's a lot of things about South Africa that if you have to verbalize.
Police isn't
really
military, so it's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of, is it?
Well, you had a choice. You could either do 2 years in the police force or 1 year in the army. It's all under the one division. It's not.
Okay.
It's all governmental. It's not regional like you have. It's not like the metropolitan police that you have in England. It's all. Okay. It's all one. Yeah. So went into the police force. And I was stationed in Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal, which is my hometown. That's where I grew up. And probably about 2 years later, there was a lot of leading up to elections, once President de Klerk decided that to unban the ANC and Nelson Mandela was freed, and they started negotiating, in terms of moving to a democracy, there was a lot of political turmoil, a lot of township violence, and a lot of people lost their lives. It was a really treacherous time for South Africa. Everyone was on the edge of their seats. Which way is it going to go? And Nelson Mandela was an incredible human being, and he managed to facilitate a peaceful transition. When I say peaceful, there were still loads of lives lost, but it could have been way worse. At the time, there was the Bosnia War that was going on at the same time, and per capita there were more deaths in KwaZulu-Natal, in my province, than in Bosnia. So it was the most dangerous place on earth.
So just to put this in context for you, so you went into the police force when Mandela came out.
Yes.
And only a year or 18 months before that, I was living in Yugoslavia.
Okay.
I lived in Yugoslavia
the similarities are getting worse and worse.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's scary.
It is.
And I left Yugoslavia, and I think it was a year later it went into civil war.
Wow.
After I left. So when the Bosnian thing happened and the civil war happened, I had only left there by about a year.
You were living there?
I did a contract job there for a year.
Really?
I lived there to manage a newspaper company.
That's incredible.
The studio system of a newspaper company.
Wow. Yeah, so...
Sorry.
No, it's just the similarities are a bit too scary. Yeah. After 2 years of being a policeman in the riot unit, so we patrolled the townships, we...
That's front line.
Yeah. Monitoring political demonstrations and attending political rallies and crowd control and all that kind of stuff, riot control. There's one funny thing that happened. My wife is older than me. She was at university while I was a policeman, and there were demonstrations. The students were demonstrating, and it's more than likely that our unit were there with tear gas and water cannons. I don't know if it happened.
She's going to have one of those moments one day when she's going to wake up from her sleep and go,
"You were the guy." Yeah, but she was. That's so weird. But she was at university while I was a riot unit policeman, attending political rallies at university. Anyway, because of all the violence that was happening in the townships, the forensic photographers from the city, they said that they're not going into the townships, it's too dangerous. But we were getting paid danger pay anyway to be there. So they decided to start a photographic unit within the riot unit. And they asked who wants to be a photographer, and nobody volunteered, because you're gathering evidence which makes you a target, or you're photographing your colleagues who might be a bit too enthusiastic when they are fulfilling their duties of crowd control. They're not going to like you either. So there's no real incentive to become the photographer.
So what made you...
Oh, they offered the police car. They said you get your own car. I said, that's cool. So prior to that, I had no creative photographic inclination whatsoever.
Did you know how to use a camera at this point? So you went through a training program?
Oh, yeah, it was. I think it was 4 weeks in Pretoria, but it wasn't really about aperture, shutter speed. It was more about when you're on the scene, this is what you need to document.
You're an evidence collector, aren't you?
You're an evidence collector.
Yeah, I mean, and that means that would it be right in me thinking, because I don't know, I've just seen a few shows.
Yeah.
But
I
don't. Not that one, but I've watched a few. Or there's Common Sense.
Okay.
But basically, the scene can't be disrupted until you've been there, so you see it firsthand.
Yes.
So bodies don't get moved.
Yes, which is very cool if you're a hustler like me, because that means that nothing gets disturbed until I get there, which means that if I shoot a whole lot of images that I can sell to the press before I put the state roll of film into the camera, then I can make some money on the side.
So you became a photographic journalist for newspapers at the same time.
Yes. And that's how
one role went one way and one role went another way.
Yeah. And the journalists, obviously, they need to get, I don't know, it's not like spies. They need to get allies.
Yeah,
they need to get information from the inside.
Of course.
So I was befriended by journalists who would say to me, look, we need information or we need images for certain scenes or events or whatever, and I worked out that I can make money with my camera. And then, I don't know, after the media interest in South Africa had dissipated, which was pretty much straight after elections. Reuters, they closed their offices down, Associated Press, AFP, they all just disappeared because the next story was in Haiti. Off they went to Haiti, and South Africa's, you know, everybody's happy, we all sit around a campfire singing Kumbaya, peaceful transition, new story. So the elections were 1994 on the 27th of April. In 1995, on Christmas Day, there was an incident in an area called Shoba Shobane, which is on the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal, near Durban. There were 22 people killed in one homestead. It was absolutely shocking, and it was Christmas Day. And I remember that I was the only photographer there, and I remember that it was one of the most horrific scenes that I've seen, and I've seen the worst. I mean, I've seen terrible, terrible things. I've got a shot of this helicopter with a cargo net full of bodies because you couldn't get the mortuary van to the homestead. It was in a rural area, so you've got arms and legs and just limbs out of this cargo net and a helicopter lifting these bodies off the. And it was a. I mean, I've got goosebumps thinking about it now, but it was a fantastic photojournalistic image. I phoned all the agencies. It ended up on page 3 of the local newspaper, and in terms of conversion rates, financially, I got the equivalent of about £12 for that shot. It's not a story. 22 people killed on Christmas Day. I know it's not a story. That's like, okay, well, what is a story? You know, and then that's when I realized I'm not going to be able to make money out of selling pictures to the press anymore. So I literally took all the leave that was due to me. And at the time, I had been a policeman for about 6 years. Yeah, end of 95, so 6 years. And I had 6 months leave due to me. And you were allowed to accumulate leave back in the day. So I had 6 months leave due to me, and I took that 6 months, which enabled me to have a little bit of a buffer. I wasn't fully reliant on photography, and I literally had a studio half the size of this room, and I could only really shoot headshots, and I put an A-frame wooden board outside, bred Florens photography. Back in the day, it was all things like I specialize in, and then this whole list of things I specialize in. But yeah, I mean, I did some cool stuff. You know, I'd go to the local schools and I'd photograph sporting events, quickly get to the 1 hour lab, because again, we're shooting film. Right up until 2002, we were shooting film, right? Go to the lab, 1 hour processing, get back to the football event or the rugby or the cricket, and I would sell pictures to the parents. And that's how I started to infiltrate the domestic market, where I started to photograph families and weddings and
social photography.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. So, just to put some kind of context on this, I've been, because we talked about this when we was in Madeira, okay, so about doing this, and you probably was thinking, yes, because many things are said in events which never happen, right? Because you know they're said in the energy of the event, and
I have a different approach on that, though.
Yeah.
I always make sure that I follow through on things that are spoken about,
Right.
and it's led to many leads.
Well, the surprise was obviously that, you know, I go there from Utrecht, I go to Birmingham,
Yeah.
see my folks, and then I go to Madeira. You're in Madeira there. I've never met you, I've never heard of you before, and then it was only towards, it was in the middle of the week, wasn't it?
Yes,
so we've been there
yes,
for a
yes.
few, and we never even looked at. I don't think I even looked at you really, and we never spoke at all for about 3 or 4 days, and then you came over and just asked if it's okay if I give you my number to give to somebody you knew as a mutual acquaintance, who I'm trying to get on here, by the way.
Okay.
That'll be interesting. I don't know whether his company
Wow,
will let him. That would be really cool. But he could come on as a private citizen rather than the person who he is. And that would be really cool. And so, Martin, if you eventually one day watch this, the seat is yours. Cool
We'll
guy.
get him here.
Cool,
We'll get him
cool
here.
guy. So anyway, yeah, and that was a real shock. And it's, oh Christ, you know him? Wow, how do you know him? And then suddenly, then we have a coffee. No, I don't drink coffee, but we had a drink together, and then it literally was like time just went so fast, and it was like 2 or 3 hours went by, and I struggled to think. I really do. I struggled to think of a time when that has ever happened before. When meeting somebody of the same sex.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just so, it was so parallel. I mean, like,
Well, it's getting worse now in terms of how.
oh yeah, and that's only started,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's only started, but yeah, and so yeah, not that I would expect you to talk about the details, especially one particular detail that you told me, but it was the offering of that information really quickly without me even attempting, because how could you ask about that kind of stuff? You were like really open incredibly quickly to tell that story, the story of, I can't demonstrate it, but you know.
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, a few things. You know, a lot of people ask me, how did you cope with just seeing death and destruction and things like that?
Exactly.
You know, at the time, it's normal. I mean, whatever happens in your life, you've got nothing really to compare it to. So most things, that's your normality.
Well,
like, I'm an only child, and people go like, "Oh, but that must be so different."
But you don't know any
I
different.
don't know any different. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so.
I'm sure the first murder you go to, or the first dead body, because being a police.
No.
That's not normal, is it? At that point in time,
God,
so that's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you.
Have you heard of a necklace? Do you know what a necklacing is?
I do. Yeah.
The first time I saw that live was and I was 18. We come around a corner we're in the township. We come around a corner, and I mean, we had days where we didn't think we were going to come home that night. I mean, there were policemen that were dying at an alarming rate. I mean, really. And I remember coming around the corner, and they were burning this one woman alive, and it's the smell. It's because the screaming doesn't last very long. It's the smell, and then getting a bit graphic here, but the body fat that melts and goes down it's like, and you look at that and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, the TV shows never show that, right?
No, they don't really, but that whole sort of mob mentality, when you've got 30 people attacking one person, it's who do you fire at? And like as a law enforcing officer, who do you fire at? Who's the one who's the murderer? There's 30 people doing it. So that I remember, that was distinctly freaky for me. And then what happens within the environment that you find yourself, I started drinking, and I started smoking a lot of weed, because it's so accessible in Natal, and at the time you don't think it's because of everything that you've seen. It's just that's what you do. But maybe now it was a coping mechanism, maybe not, whatever. But also it's the shift environment that you find yourself in. When I'm talking about the shift environment, you work in 8-day cycle. So 4 days on. So 4 days on, 4 days off. So 2 day shifts, 2 night shifts, 4 days off. So after you've been to work, you're going to have a couple of drinks with your mates afterwards. The second day, you go out that night and get so smashed because you want to sleep the whole of the next day so that you can go work 2 night shifts and then you're back onto 4 days off. Now, when you're on 4 days off, you could be off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you can't really have normal friends, civilian friends.
Yeah.
So you only hang around with other
people in the same boat as you.
Yeah, and then you decide, okay, for these 4 days off, we're going to go and rent a little cottage up the coast and just, have booze and braai vlees,
but you've got lots
barbecues.
of people potentially suffering the same symptoms and having the same coping mechanism. So that normalizes it, right?
Yes.
Because then you see peers doing the same thing as you're doing and validating it in a way. And because of the extreme of the exposure of your job, potentially your coping mechanism becomes an extreme too, right? So yeah, I mean, when you're exposed to less trauma, maybe your coping mechanism doesn't have to be so strong, but the more, and what you described, I mean, I've seen footage and seen lots of footage of lots of stuff, and with my job, some of the journals I used to scan pictures for, some of the things that I've seen, I've had to scan 35 mils.
Just horrific.
And medical, I used to scan when I was 18. I used to scan 250 images a month in a 1 week or 2 weeks I had, and these scanners were quite slow. You couldn't do hundreds and hundreds in a day. If you could do 30 scans in a day, you were good.
Yeah.
And we had this contract for the British Medical Journal in London, and the pictures would come in, and you wouldn't even know what you're looking at.
And the negatives or the positives?
Oh, it would be positive.
Okay.
It would be slide transparency, and then what would happen is I would get all the pictures in, and then the holes in which I had to scale them to make them fit, but I wouldn't know what it was. Sometimes you'd know what it was. But then many times you'd go, what the fuck is that? Yeah. And then you wouldn't know. And then you would make another chrome lens and it'd go up on the Rogues Gallery, and then about a week later the text would come in. And then you'd read what it was and you'd go, oh my God. I mean...
And the weird thing for me at the time was, because I was the guy with the camera and people thought that I knew what I was doing, then you start to photograph sort of domestic events for your peers. So I started photographing my police friends and colleagues, families and weddings. And I remember the one day after processing a wedding of a colleague of mine, the first roll of film has got dead body, dead body, dead body, dead body, bride getting ready. And to me, that was like, okay, cut that part off, that goes there. And I think maybe compartmentalizing it was...
Look, I mean, any understanding as you get older is that's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do.
But I mean, it was the complete antithesis.
The contrast is...
Yeah, it's just... But at the time, it was normal.
But every single... I mean, the thing is, given the nature of you being a police photographer, you're never going to be called to take a picture of a happy event, right?
No.
I mean, every click is trauma of...
Yeah, like it's the worst...
Of something.
Yeah.
It's destruction or death, brutality, or crime. I mean, like, did you ever get anything like, I don't know, like what you might call a misdemeanor, something small like a burglary or something?
Oh no, we just dealt with politically motivated crimes and township violence. That's it.
And that's going to be...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we were being paid, danger paid, to be in the townships. You know, it wasn't... No, we never got called out for drunken disorderly or anything like that.
Yeah, the term domestic
violence?
They call it, domestic situation, wouldn't be two people arguing over, we cut down the branch from my tree. You know.
No, it would be,
why did you kill my brother? Yeah.
In some way for me, there's a couple of things that happened. but in some way for me, it's allowed me to acknowledge the nice, beautiful, happy things that I'm doing now, because I've got a reference point. I mean, like, no matter what happens, it can't be that bad. You know, because it's like you've got this whole. It probably balanced it out for me. So for me, I know that there are people that have the most horrible existence, and then you've got this fairy tale situation of a wedding, which, if you have to really analyze it, or if an alien dropped down, you have to, you know, describe it to an alien what a wedding is about. It is a fairy tale that is sort of augmented reality in a way.
It's not exactly depicting real life, is it?
No, it's not.
It's for a very short period of time.
Yes.
A magnified, amplified, situation that you don't find when you just walk down the street.
No, and it's pretty surreal from that perspective. But it is very nice now that all I deal with is happiness, happy people, even if they get divorced 6 months later. I only see them when they're happy.
Which is likely.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, of course.
Yeah, of course. So the thing I think that kind of cemented it for me in terms of, well, the irony was that we both found ourselves at this place. We didn't speak at all because I don't really speak to a great deal of people. I speak to people professionally when I go and work.
Yes.
That was the old me. And I've been wanting things to be different. But when you've done something forever, for like 30 years, and you behaved in a particular way, in those days, I was never personal with people. It's always professional. Even when you go out for a beer afterwards, you're still working, because the only thing you got in common is work. So people are going to be. So for me, it was always this thing that I always kept this dividing line between me as me. And so the thing that really interested me or got my attention, I think, was when you said that you fundamentally you called yourself an alcoholic and an addict because of the lifestyle and everything. And I had my own similar things. I didn't do the booze and stuff. I see that isn't my personality. My what I would call a weakness, or what I did. I had different things I became addicted to, very different things. But it's a compensating mechanism, and it goes with the lifestyle. So the more extreme the lifestyle, the more extreme the coping. But the thing that was interesting for me, what I got from your story, was that you decided to change that. Yes. You obviously reached a point one day and you went, "Fuck, this is not going to continue." No, not in a good way.
It was really the realization that, well, it was more the case that I was just drained emotionally. Most days I would wake up and first of all wonder how I had got home, or if the car was okay, or because I was driving drunk. I was doing stupid things. I mean, I did a lot of stupid things.
I know that we can't. The thing you graphically you performed graphically in front of my face. Yeah. Clearly can't be said here, and never would I encourage you to. But
just to put it into perspective, I've been arrested 4 times.
Yeah.
Justifiably. It wasn't. I mean, yeah. I just was tired of continually being the one that was sorry for something I'd done, and I hadn't even known what I'd done yet. So you kind of, I was in a relationship with somebody for probably 3 or 4 years at the time, and I would know every morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, what did I do last night?
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I just wanted to take that control back. And
what was the catalyst for? You said, I realized. I mean, you don't just wake up and realize. Something usually happens. I know you said that there was this one particular time you were arrested.
Yeah.
And was that the thing that then scared you into?
No, I carried on boozing after that. It was. I remember drinking probably a bottle of whiskey one night. It was the 11th of January, 1996. And I woke up that morning and we had been called out to a scene. I think there were 3 dead in a place called Ndwedwe. And my partner, a guy by the name of Johan, he came to fetch me, and we were driving to Ndwedwe, and it's a rural area with bumpy road, and literally every 5 or 6 minutes I was like, okay, stop, open the door, out the door, right, let's go, you know. And then I was like, this can't carry on, this cannot carry on. And innately I knew I was a good person. You know, I mean, what we spoke about this afternoon, you know, with the wolf analogy, I knew I had a good wolf in me.
Yeah, that worked, that story, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I had a good wolf in me, but I was feeding the other wolf, you know, and what happened there was I was perpetuating that whole lifestyle, and that's essentially who I became. And then I realized that I just can't do this anymore. And with me, my wife has now taught me that there is a lot of grey in the world, but for me it's black or white. So if I'm going to drink, I do it properly. If I'm not going to drink, I don't have one drop, and I haven't had for 22 years or something.
Well, that was the thing that I think really kind of, I don't know, what would you say, resonated with me. I like the word resonate.
I like that word too.
It's a great word. Because it just depicts exactly what it's describing. There's no better word that describes that thing, that it lives with you day after day.
Speaks
it's still,
to you. Yeah,
it's just there. Is that when you wanted to change, you exercise became a runner.
Yes.
Because to come off of alcohol and come off of
Yes,
drugs,
I switched addictions.
that's not easy. Yeah, exactly. You coined it in a way, you phrased it in a way which is me. Yeah, like when we came in the room here and I said I haven't had a coffee for now 20 months. There was no one on the planet who drank more coffee than me with my lifestyle, because you know, you get to the airport, you have a coffee, and then I always get there really early so I can get work done and stuff. So I have 3 coffees at the airport. Then you have a few on the plane. Then when you land, someone throws a coffee in your hand. Then you get to the gig and you've got 20 coffees.
You've had 10 during a day or something.
And I don't know. Caffeine is a drug. So, okay, it wasn't...
Yeah, but nobody ever beats up their wife because they've had too many coffees.
But the thing is, there are times I'm around people and they go, I know people that go, I can't start my day without a coffee. I can't function without a coffee. To me, that's a dependency.
Yeah.
It's not a huge dependency,
but
it's not a severe one, but it's still a dependency. And when I was
you were dependent on
when I was that big thing that I showed you and you went, holy shit.
That's a big transformation there.
And that transformation happened in only 2.5 months when I decided to change. Because like you, for me it's binary, it's either on or off, it's black or white. If I'm going to do something, then that is it, I do it. And so the coffee thing and tea, haven't touched a drop for 20 months. I love the smell of coffee. I love
the smell of cigars, but you know.
Yeah, no, no, I mean, no, that can't work for me. But it was the fact that you switched addiction to get off of addiction. You found a new addiction and you called it an addiction, because a lot of people wouldn't, because that's kind of a negative word, right? It's a negative. It has negative connotations.
Yeah, it does have negative connotations, but it is what it is.
It's a bloody healthy one to become an ultra marathon runner, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it is, but it's I mean, it's self-perpetuating as well, because you see positive results and then you act on it, and you amplify.
So when you went from the drug addiction and then you went, okay, so I need to clean up my act, and it's logical to then suddenly go, right, I'm going to start exercising. You know, I'm going to physically improve myself.
Yes.
Did you set the goal of the?
Oh no.
Of course not. Yes.
No.
You set a smaller. The smaller goal was.
The smaller goal was just to lose weight, because I was overweight at the time. Would be to lose weight and to have a fix every day. so that I didn't have to think about alcohol or you know, the drug thing. Yeah, by having that daily fix of endorphins.
Yeah.
So that was it. It was my daily hit. So that's what I switched to the running. I know this is going to sound really weird, but all South Africans will understand this. Most people in the world, like their bucket list goal is to run a marathon. I mean, for people to run a marathon is a huge achievement.
It's one of mine.
Okay. In South Africa, there's a race called the Comrades Marathon, and it's almost like a rite of passage to becoming a runner. If
everybody has to do it,
well,
call themselves a runner.
Which is a bit ridiculous because it is 90 kilometers, 56 miles.
Oh, so it's not a marathon.
No, it's
like two marathons.
Yeah, and then some.
Yeah.
And it's in one day. It's not a stage race. And now it's happening next month on the 10th of June, which is just over a month to go.
And this is in South Africa.
Yeah, and it's the 24th time that I'm doing it. So if I have to look back at myself when I was 18 and you had to tell me that in however many years' time, 30 years' time, or no, 20, whatever, 28 years' time or something, that I would have run as much as I've run, there's no ways. You know,
so tell me when it is again?
10th of June.
And what's the weather like then?
Oh, it's winter.
It's winter, yeah, but that's not like a European winter. So
17, 18 degrees Celsius.
See, that's like perfect summer for me.
Yeah. It is perfect summer. I mean, the day like today, okay. It was like it is today. Today is a little bit warm, but the same. You know, the blue skies and
that's winter. Yeah.
That's winter in Africa.
Oh, wow. So,
but there's another race that you can come and run with me. There's the Two Oceans, which is this year I did my 10th, which I'm really stoked about. I'm happy about that. That's 56 kilometers, and that's in Cape Town. It's the Two Oceans. You run along the Atlantic Ocean as well as the Indian Ocean.
And when is that one?
Easter weekend. It's Easter Saturday. So
that's earlier though. That's earlier.
Well, we use it as a training run for Comrades.
So I could potentially
next year.
I could potentially see. My goal has been I've signed up for the Amsterdam one this year.
Yeah. You don't have to do everything in the first 2 years.
But you see, like you said, you're very goal orientated. So am I. If I don't put goals in front of myself, I'm a donkey. If I don't have a carrot on a stick in front of me, I won't do anything. You know, I'm really good at doing nothing, as well as I'm really good at working insanely hard.
Yeah, but you have to have. There's got to be a point to it.
I need to have just this thing that I can focus on. Like I was saying, when we met, that gig is not the best gig I would ever choose to do. It wasn't for any status or anything. It's just that because I was such a blubber, I was huge, so huge.
And you just said it as a.
And I just went, okay, so I'm this now, and by the time I know I can get down to the weight I want to get down in a couple of months, but that isn't the key. The key is keeping it off for a long period of time, because the up and down is everybody's problem. So that means in a year's time or in 10 months' time, I need to be this weight at this time, and so I need to have the goal. And so I've set my goal for Amsterdam. I'm sure 5.5 months training is more than enough.
Yeah, you'll be fine, really, mate.
It'll be fine.
It's a cool marathon.
I think it's going to be painful because I've never done one before. But,
it's flat.
It's flat, which is perfect. It's in a nice city.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I'm going to have too much problems with that. But I've already set the goal that I want to do an ultramarathon. I knew about them way before I met you, but you're the first person I've met in person that I know has run one.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so
and I'm just a normal guy, mate. It's not like, you know.
No, but this is the whole point. This is the whole point of everything. Everybody is only normal. Perception is what's wrong.
Yes.
It's the fact that people project these ideals on you or something, especially when you had the life I've had doing the things I've done, and you do exactly the same. Me in kind of software and techniques, I guess, in post-production or whatever you want to call it, and you in the photography. It's very, very similar. The symmetry is scary. I don't think I've met anybody that I could go ditto, 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 ditto. But it was the fact that the thing that is different, I think, between you and me, in the fact that I was in the same position when I was, but you had your negative addictions because of the job before you becoming a, say, public figure teacher.
Yes.
Mine was because I became somebody, and I didn't voluntarily reach a moment where I go, you know what, I need to change something. It needed, maybe it's my bloody minded nature back then. I know I still got one, but it isn't as bad as it is, but it used to be. But I needed, life needed to do it for me. It was, and it was, there was no, let's just say, without being too graphical, there was nowhere else to go. There was no more depths, you know, because everything's relative. Okay, a datum point, everything's relative in what you've experienced, and I've experienced many ups, huge and huge downs.
Yeah.
And then that becomes your frame of reference, and then you think I've hit rock bottom, but when you know the rock bottom isn't even close to rock bottom, and when I think ultimately it's probably better when you volunteer it on yourself, because you get that huge sense of achievement that, hey, I changed myself, I realized I brought this change upon myself.
But you also have to I also have to acknowledge the people that were around me at the time, because I had 2 or 3 people that facilitated me being able to change. Because at 24, to give up drinking is quite a big thing, especially when you're going out, because I wanted to maintain the same relationships that I had with people around me. I just didn't want to drink.
Yeah.
But then when you go out and
you're sober and everybody else is shit-faced.
But then people say to you, why don't you drink? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then you start to go like, okay, hold on. What do you mean, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, but then the problem is when you then justify why you don't drink, you then automatically transfer it as being, well, then you have a problem with you.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did the same when I was 17, because I never did the club. I did the going to the pub and getting hammered every weekend, every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, from the age of like, sorry mum, 14.
Yeah.
Wow. And would be catatonic for the weekend when staying in villages in the nearby town, and there was no real age limit in the pubs, and it was ridiculous. And then when I first started work, for only about 1 year did I do the thing when you're in a group of friends and a few people a lot older, so they're your peers, and then you go out and you act the role, you know, trying to, I guess, define yourself, find yourself. I only did that for a really short period of time, and then I just went, and I used to earn £24 a week. That was my first salary. Okay, It wasn't. I didn't earn enough to pay tax.
Okay.
So they only stopped something like 50p for national insurance contribution. It was some 75p, I think it was. It was a ridiculous kind of situation. But I would go and earn this money, and then I would be peeing it up a wall.
Yes.
And that
that's
eventually,
you earned it. If you'd been given it by your parents, it would have been different.
Maybe I wouldn't have. And I was just thinking, and I was watching all my friends, and then they had more money because they were a bit older than me, and they'd been in the working thing a lot longer. They had a lot more money. I'm trying to compete, and I'm just spending all my money, and then I was just thinking, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm just turning money into water.
Yeah.
And then I stopped, and then like you, I would go out with my friends, and I would just drink orange juice or Coke, and then within an hour, everybody's shit-faced, and then I'm looking at them thinking, that was me last week, and I'm listening to the conversation and stuff, and so I then stopped and just dived completely into football and work, and just became a workaholic. That became my addiction, completely. And without that, though, I'd never have known the things I know that helped me get.
Well, it's all a journey, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if I look at it,
you don't even know where the forks are in the road until you look back. You don't know you're at a junction half the time.
No.
There is something we need to do. Look.
Yes.
Michel Matt says hello.
Oh, hi.
That was a while ago.
Yes, and also a good friend of mine, Linda.
Ah.
Yeah, she's in South Africa.
Cool. Whereabouts in South Africa?
She lives in Cape Town and Pretoria.
I went there a number of times with Adobe.
You like Cape Town? It's gorgeous. It's really cool.
You know, once we did this event and finished late afternoon, sunset was happening, and right on the foot on the coast from Table Mountain. Table Mountain was there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in that tiny sliver
Yes.
of hotels, beach hotels, and then mountain like that. And so I'm there with a drink, looking up at Table Mountain, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, the tablecloth will be here soon or something." And I went, "What?
What are you talking about?"
What?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the tables, thinking waiters are going to come in. He said, "Yeah, just wait a minute. We'll get another beer." And we're sitting there having a beer, chatting about Photoshop and everything. And then suddenly the cloud starts.
Yeah,
falling
it's gorgeous.
over, and
Unbelievable.
I watched it start, and I couldn't walk away.
It's a religious experience. It is.
And then going to the top though, that freaked me out.
Oh really? The beauty.
In a good way. Oh, no, absolutely.
The beauty. No, it is. It's an amazing country. I mean, I absolutely adore South Africa. The people, all those events that happened. I mean, I can only look at that from my point of reference. You know, the late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that whole transformation stage. And then for us, winning the Rugby World Cup in '95 just cemented the whole country together. And it just, you know, it's a gorgeous country, and there's so many things that are. Your mic is low or off.
Let me see. Yeah, something's very low. Can you just tap yours?
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is low. What is that?
Boom, boom.
It wasn't when I did the test. Sorry, guys. Yeah, something. Oh. Right, we're just going to have a 2-minute pause while I just do something very simple. It's certainly not batteries. Why is it always something? It's not the batteries, but hey, look, I'm changing the batteries. It's really strange.
It seems to be working again.
No, because that receiver is off. So that is on, as you just heard. That's about as uncool as it can be. I dropped a battery. But where did it go?
Are we still live?
Oh no, it's on now. Is it?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's back. That's really strange. Really strange. Maybe there's a Duff battery because I charged them up.
Yeah,
all of them. We're back on.
Yeah.
So just a quick confirmation, guys. Is it okay now? It's on now. Cool.
It's on. Thanks for helping out there.
Hello from Cape Town. Yeah, love Cape Town. You know, one of my best memories that I had as soon as you started talking about Cape Town was I did this Adobe presentation. I have to say it was a great show that was put on there in Cape Town. We did Johannesburg and Cape Town, and then we came out, we went into the city. I was in a car with the event organisers, and who were a rowdy bunch. They knew how to party, and they took us out. And then I was with this guy at the time was I'd say we were quite close. Mohammed, he worked for Adobe, and I went out for a drink. We ended up going out for a drink. We're in the bar, and then we went. All I know is I can't remember if he knew it was downstairs or we heard it and we just investigated. And then there was a bloody drumming.
Oh yeah.
Oh man! And we just went in there and we sat down and just put the drum. But I had no idea what I was doing. But it's like, come in, dude, come in. Just
it's magnetic.
And you know, you're all kind of like a bit timid and this, and you get in there, and then suddenly somebody just starts to do a little bit, so, and then it just builds and builds, and then before you know it, a whole bunch of strangers have all got this little drum in between their legs, and you just
that's South Africa. I mean, it's really cool. It is cool.
I will never forget that. Never. But yeah, the Table Mountain thing is just beyond comprehension, really. It is beautiful. Beautiful. So, one thing that we need to show, because we need to turn this a little bit into maybe something to do with
photography,
the thing we have in common, because to be honest, I don't even want to talk about that really, because the reason I think you will be here many times.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think you will, because I just think there's so many in that 3 hours or 2 hours that we spent. I mean, Christ, I mean, it was and it was just each one of those things could be discussed at length. I think. I'll tell you what we could do. We could do the wolf thing. Let's get the wolf thing out of the way, shall we? Because that seems to really
resonate.
Yes, with you definitely. So anyway, I picked up this one off the web. Basically, all you've got to do is just search Cherokee or Indian wolf story, and there's many different morphs of this, but basically, I don't know. I've done some great things. I think intrinsically, I would call myself a good person. But there are people out there who would not call me that, and I gave them reason. Because of the extremity of the person on stage doing what I do, enabled, instead of realizing that my behavior in my personal life was wrong, I always had the next day adrenaline rush, endorphin thing of being on stage and being center of attention. I always had that to compensate, so it didn't matter how bad life got. I always had a bigger audience and a bigger audience and a bigger audience, and once you get in front of 4,000 people and you have like people following you with a video camera, because the audience is so big, no one can see you, so they have to project just your face.
Oh my gosh!
And then you've got 2 enormous screens of your desktop, and then multiple screens in the audience, so people at the back can't. You know, once you go and do those,
rockstar status.
And
I mean, it really is.
It is. All I know is that I was even talking to somebody yesterday who was sitting just there. I was talking about this, that we watch sometimes people rise and fall, right? And you know, comes the money and everything, and it's usually maybe acting, pop star, that kind of stuff. And all I know is I didn't have that, but I had something very similar. It wasn't to the extreme, definitely wasn't to the extreme. It's all relative. It is all relative. If you've never had it before, then you don't know how big it is, what you've got. And to me, it was something that I'd never dreamt in a million years would ever happen to me in 1,000 lifetimes.
Alcoholic policeman.
Exactly. You don't think you're going to be flown around the world every 5 seconds.
No, never.
And you're not looking for that work. It comes to you. And so when my negative behaviour was becoming really, really, really negative.
And destructive.
Oh, like you, you're the wrong person to say like you wouldn't believe. But this came into my life via a human being who put that in front of me. And because I think the thing is, if you intrinsically believe that you're a good person and you do something really bad, then you are then confronted with the problem of thinking, does that make me a bad person? And so that's why this, because I then, you go into the self-loathing thing of, oh God, that means that I'm a dick.
And all sorts of things.
I'm scum. I am my actions. And it's so easy then to fall into that. So that's what I fell into. So yes, I am all the negative things that I've been called and the things I've done. And so it was this that actually kind of made me realize that, and the basic premise of this story is, grandfather Indian talking to his grandson, and the child says, how do I know if I'm a good person or a bad person? And the Cherokee Indian says, well, you know, everybody's got 2 wolves inside them. One is black, one is white, one is good, one is bad. One's evil, anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment. And the other is good, joy, peace, hope, all the nice things. And then and there are these two wolves, and they're fighting, and he's saying the same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. And then the grandson then says, so which wolf will win? And then the grandfather says,
Oof. It's the one that you feed.
The one you feed. And that,
That's
because I
powerful.
went from one destructive thing, because of something really, really good in my life, into another destructive thing of, you know, the self-loathing thing. And then it was only this, it was the one you feed.
Yeah.
The goosebumps I get every time I read that. And that then made me go, yeah, it's not binary. I'm not good or bad. I'm not right or wrong. I'm everything, and I'm only going to be what I choose to encourage myself to be. See what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. However, in certain circumstances, external forces also feed that wolf.
Oh, look, this doesn't take into account external circumstances,
Yeah,
right? This is
internal
what
turmoil.
you are responsible. I'm not responsible for what happens to me.
No.
Like, I'm the wrong person to mug. A mugger is not going to know that.
Yeah.
But I'm not the person to mug. You know what I mean?
I remember that.
When you know what I mean? It's like
I know what you mean.
and I think probably that's why it's never happened to me in all the cities I've been to late at night, walking around. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen because, you know, on the late night train rides home to Shepperton from London.
Are you
city
disappointed
centre.
that you haven't been?
No, but it would never happen. And it's like, no, I'm not disappointed. I just think that it's an aura thing. You know, it's an energy thing. That I think ultimately people are going to prey or try and take advantage of the easiest target. And I just don't think I probably exude.
No.
He's an easy target. And, but, so yes, I luckily, I think because of some of the things that have helped me do some of the worst things ever, there is a place in me that I can choose to go to, which means if external forces come my way and it requires me to rise to meet the challenge, I'm able to. You know what I mean? And it's not a good thing, but it has a good use.
Yeah.
But luckily, it's never, I can't remember the last time.
Yeah.
Can't remember the last time.
I can relate.
I'm sure you can. Anyway, we're going to get rid of that and we're going to do something a little bit different now. But yeah, that story is stunning. The story of the lights, the story of the lighting, your new lighting is something we will look at. But first we're going to look at your Vimeo page. So on here these are all obviously videos because it's on Vimeo.
Yeah.
Some of these are fly on the wall documentary style videos of shoots and behind the scenes of weddings that you've done.
Weddings, commercial shoots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but then you've also got the training videos.
Yeah.
So this is just a fly on the wall. Is this a wedding?
Yes, this was a wedding that I shot in Dubai a couple of years back. Yeah, a couple of years back. I showcased this wedding as like that. You know, at the time, obviously we all want to progress as we're going on. We want to get better and better. But yeah, this is one of the standout showcase weddings that I photographed in the Middle East, which I was really proud of the fact that I had premeditatedly gone after a certain demographic in a certain area, and managed to achieve my goal because I kind of at the moment I'm hovering between South Africa and Europe. So I work in South Africa quite a lot, and I work in Europe quite a lot, and now in the Middle East quite a lot. So in the beginning, while I was traveling from Durban to Europe, I would go through Dubai because I'd be flying on Emirates, and we all know that there are a lot of expats living in the Middle East, and it's a tax haven, so disposable income. So I started thinking, hold on, if I come past through Dubai all the time, what's stopping me from taking a couple of days, to go and shoot commercial work or to do some training? So the one day I was going through, and we landed at like 6 in the morning, and the flight was, my connecting flight was at 2 in the afternoon. So I had pre-arranged with somebody else that I'd known was living in Dubai, and I literally got off the plane at 6. We shot out into the desert. We took pictures for an hour, went back to the airport, got on a plane, and went through to Europe. And I used those images to market myself as somebody who shoots in the Middle East or in a desert environment, because you have to show what you want to sell. I mean, that's not. So I was showcasing these desert images, and I booked this wedding, and it was so cool for me that I ended up making a documentary video about me shooting this wedding, like right from the beginning. I filmed the first meeting with the bride, filmed the engagement session, the wedding, a post-wedding shoot in the desert with camels and all sorts of things, and then how I put everything together, and make basically a documentary about how I approach one wedding. Right.
And then the next one is then the your training.
Yes.
You've got online training.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate to be in the position now where I am confident in what I'm doing. So when I have, commissioned gigs, I get a videographer in, and while I'm shooting, I'm telling you what I'm doing, and I use it as an opportunity to train. Rather than just having a shoot where it's set up with models and dresses, and it's. I think it adds legitimacy if you have if it's a paid for gig that I'm commissioned for as a photographer.
Yeah, yeah. So do you enjoy the training?
I love the training.
What do you like most then? The doing it or the teaching it?
I wasn't inherent. I mean, I'm not inherently creative, so I've had to teach myself how to be creative, which I think in terms of my career has been quite a plus, because I'm more of a hustler first and the business person, and then the creativity came after that, rather than being creative and then trying to sell work that I'm emotionally attached to. So I like doing what I'm doing, and I enjoy creating the images that I create, but I'm not emotionally attached to them. So I can sell.
Do you see that as an advantage?
Yes.
No hesitation.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Because as soon as you become emotionally involved, you become vulnerable, and
do you?
Yeah, because you become you become friends with your clients, or you see the emotional value that they find in it, and you feel like you want to share with that emotional side of things, whereas without being manipulative, it's really our job to. I mean, we're being paid to capture this fairy tale, right? And if I become emotionally involved in it and I just give things to people because I know it's going to make them happy, then I'm not really going to be able to feed my kids.
So you don't really relate to someone who says, oh yeah, even all my proofs that go out are retouched to my standard.
Oh, no, I don't.
I've met so many people who do that. Even my proofs.
No, from a business perspective, that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. Exactly, because that's an emotional decision, right? That's not a practical decision.
Unless they're getting paid enough.
I know if you're being paid to do that.
Yeah.
Because I approach my end of it, which is basically what you outsource. Obviously all the post-processing and retouching and stuff that I teach. I would teach exactly the same as you. I mean, I never understood how suddenly in my world, when I first went through the graphic design digital revolution, because photography wasn't the first digital revolution, video was actually. Well, design, repro and design, then video, then the web, and then photography. And in all the teaching, in all the different environments of press and ad agencies, and God, hundreds and thousands of them I've been into to lecture and consult. Not one graphic designer in the digital revolution of design ever asked me how to smooth a woman's face. No. Not one. anywhere in the world. Not one. It wasn't a requirement. No one needed to do it because people looking like what they looked like was okay. It was normal. It was only when photographers came into the world of digital imaging that then this
illusion.
Yeah, fake. This fake needs to happen, and now it's become standard.
I think there's a bit of a backlash.
It's now, the pendulum has now swung, but pendulums always overreach before they come back, don't they?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
But also, people who, well, photographers think that Photoshop was around only since digital photography.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really simple. If you see these like my two hands, right? So they represent the length of the age of photography. So I'm doing this for you. So this hand here is 10 years. Let's just say it's 26 years old now. So 13 years here and 13 years here. The first 13 years was the development of Photoshop for the graphic design and printing industry.
Advertising agencies.
Yeah. And then the second 50% of the development of Photoshop as being for digital photographers, because that's when digital photography became mainstream. Every single feature I use in Photoshop are features that were brought to Photoshop in the first development.
Yeah.
There is not one feature that I use in Photoshop because they are all shite.
Yeah.
It's all just glitz and kind of icing on the cake. I care about the cake.
Don't you think that also coincides with like the exponential growth of technology and then the plateauing?
Well, that's what we said before about what we were talking about before. What I said about the more technology advances, the more stupid we're encouraged to be.
Yeah, the less we have to.
So you don't have to learn theory anymore. And I'm not just talking about in my life, in my profession. In life, we don't fix things anymore, do we? If you have an electrical thing and it breaks, you don't learn how to fix it. You take it and you get rid of it. You buy another one.
Remember your first car?
Yeah.
You knew how a car operated because we were under that. We were fixing the exhaust pipe with that like tape. It's called gun gum or something like that. Yeah. And you're like putting asbestos. Yeah. You don't know how. I mean, something goes wrong with a car now. It's like back away from the car.
The scanners, for instance, the first scanners I used to fly around the world teaching and installing and teaching, they were like back then, and we're talking like 33 years ago. Yeah. At 21, I was at 21. No, at 22 because I had a year's learning. At 22, I was flying around the world first class, teaching, scanning. And installing them at 22.
Okay.
And how can you have a proportional reaction when you come from a tiny little town in the middle of Oxfordshire in the UK, walking to work to the same box every day, and that is your horizon and everything, and then suddenly you go in one step, in just one career move, one step you go to Hemel Hempstead, to Crossfield Electronics, and then within a year you're traveling around the world on your own, without a mobile phone, without GPS.
Wow.
And my first job, I went to, what did I do? I went to Denmark. I did a job in the UK. That was an interesting one. And I did a really good job there. And I was the only person that would go there because I didn't know of the historical arguments. These were the most temperamental people on the planet. And because I went in there and I fronted it out, I made a really good friend. And even after all these years, we still communicate, the boss, the manager. But my first job on my own was to fly to Atlanta and then drive to Tennessee.
Okay.
Without a smartphone, without GPS, and then I would drive to Hemel Hempstead. I would sit at a table, big table, loads of people, and all doing. It's normal for them to travel around the world and do the job, but I was by far the youngest by like 5 years. I was the youngest, and because I lied through my teeth to get the job. I
sounds like
and then just you say you're told to go to HR, and then they just hand you 3 months living money in traveller's checks. This isn't your salary. Your salary's still going in your bank. So the way it worked was when you travelled, every country had an index-linked daily allowance for living, and that was only to buy an evening meal, and it was $50 a day.
Wow.
Your hotel, your clothing, washing of your clothing, your car, the fuel, breakfast is already paid for because it comes with the room. So you're spending money to live outside of what's already been paid was $50 a day. Back then that was £35, and we're talking 33 years ago.
That's like 250 now.
And they would give, and then you would get that every day, tax-free, traveller's checks, given to you. 3 months of that is given to you, just handed in
one
to
big
you. There's your money to live in America.
Yeah.
Here's your flight, an open first-class ticket, and that's it. And you would go there and you would just be used and abused by the American office to go and do service calls, consultancy, training, installations, whatever, and then you just go from one place to another, sometimes every day.
And that happened like in a year?
In 1 year, I went.
Wow.
and how are you meant to have a proportional response to that? And you think, because at the time when they said, you're too young to do this, I said, no, I'm not. Yeah, but you're not 25, because you said you were 25 and I was 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but I have the experience, I can do it. And they took a chance and they did it. And so I did that and I went to the States 3 times for 3 lots of 3 or 4 months, something like that, and then went to a whole bunch of other countries. And that's when it all, the travel, that was hardcore. That was before Ryanair, and you know, the average person wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't even, you'd be on an aeroplane a few times in your life maybe, and I was on one every day, and that's how it all started, really. That's how it all started. But it's
quite extreme.
Yeah, when I think about it now, it's how I'm here is kind of a miracle, I think, maybe. But yeah, but it's, everything is relative, and you become your environment. And we talked about this earlier. This is one of the things about meeting somebody for so long before this happens. Mm-hmm. In some ways it's good, because we can call on the conversations we had over dinner.
Oh, yes.
But there's a part of me that thinks that maybe when I do these, it should be you just come in, you sit down, you mic test, and you talk.
Yeah.
So every subject is like virgin territory. It's the first time you talk about it. But the becoming your environment is a thing to be really wary of, isn't it?
Well, especially from the policeman perspective, you know, you might go in with all intentions of changing the world and being the good cop and all of that, but the environment corrupts you. Not that I don't take responsibility for my actions, because I did what I did. It wasn't anybody else that made me do, you know, certain things, but. Yeah, you know, you tend to then be less judgmental on other people when you realize that you can be affected by your environment. It also works in a good way too, though, because from the perspective of me targeting higher end clients. Because I really believe that to make it as a photographer in this day and age, you need to target people with disposable income, because photography is not a it's a luxury. It's not an essential part of life. It's not an essential. Yeah, I'm not selling bread and milk here. Yeah. This is really to people that have disposable income, and one of the things that I always talk about when I'm teaching is the fact that I am not my target market. You know, if I can afford me, then I'm too cheap. I need to target people that have more disposable income than I do. And what happens there is that you start hanging around in different circles, which in some ways is really constructive, because I learned so much more about a more refined way of life, not a better way of life or a worse way of life, but a more refined way of life. So I've become a lot more articulate. I've become a lot more aware of things like fashion, fragrance, all that kind of stuff that I was completely oblivious to before. So that when you become not your environment, but your target market. So if you're targeting a higher end market, eventually you start to, by osmosis,
No, of course. I mean, the statement of you become your environment is 100% true, okay? I mean, there's been loads of films that have depicted this and everything, but I mean, anybody can relate, I think, to noticing a change in themselves, and once they're open enough to know why that change happened, it's usually because you've surrounded yourself with different people, or you changed your job, and then you suddenly found yourself having different opinions and different views.
Yes.
We've all done that, but the thing is to recognize that that's a 100%, it's a 100% reality.
Yes.
And so you can use it to your advantage. And I remember on my very first trip to the States, and I think I talked about this before, so hate to repeat myself, but I'm going to, because there's a few people here that didn't see that one, is that I read on an in-flight magazine in the days when you could still smoke on an aeroplane, which
Yes.
I can remember.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever smoked once in my life. I'm a smoking, I'm phobic when
Yes.
it comes to smoking. But I read in a magazine this article that said how it was on Pan Am was my first flight. And on the in-flight magazine it said how to become a millionaire. And so they interviewed 6 self-made millionaires and asked them, what are the traits, what are the skills you have to learn? How do you become a self-made millionaire? And one of them, the most important one is never give up. You know, just because you failed, you know, go bankrupt a few times, become a millionaire, whatever. But the one was, if you want to be a millionaire, you should surround yourself with millionaires. You know, you should surround yourself with the people, with the traits of who you wish to become.
Yes.
And that is exactly the same as saying you become your environment, isn't it? So yeah, that maybe is a slightly more negative thing, but you can do it like I have here. I came here for a specific reason. Yes, I came to kind of improve my work and everything, but I realized that me just being bullheaded and just charging and being demented and binary, I'm just going to do the work thing, I'm just going to do the work thing, that was going to be a really hard slog to only concentrate only on the work. I had to concentrate on the periphery, my personal life too. Put myself in a place which is a really good place to live, a good culture to live in, a good society to live in. And I don't think I could have chosen a better one from where I am.
The work gets easier.
Everything that you are then aiming for is like you're going with the flow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you're going with the current instead of, and it absolutely is beginning to happen. It takes a while, but I can definitely sense, I can sense a huge shift from the person that landed here to who I am now 14 months later. How long have you been here?
4.5 years.
How long?
4.5 years.
Wow, well, okay. And you don't have a molecule of regret, do you?
Oh, I love this place.
Yeah. What do you love the most about this place?
It feels like home to me. The immigration people are the first people that you see when you arrive.
Yeah.
And when they stamp your passport, they say, "Welcome home." And I know it sounds really, you know, insignificant, but it makes such a big difference. I feel that the culture in the Netherlands is strange thing about living in a country where they speak a different language. For me, was in England. They speak the same language as I do in South Africa, but the culture is different. I've never really clicked with the culture in England, whereas here the language is different, but the culture is the same.
Wow. Example.
I have a whole lot of UK people going mental after this, but there's a really strong family focus. It's not all about work, money.
Yeah.
There's a very strong work-life balance. I feel that the Dutch people are way less judgmental. I don't feel like I'm being judged. You know, for the clothes I wear, the haircut I have. You know, you can do whatever you want and you're not judged. But this is my personal experience.
Of course,
you know, it's not.
That's why you're here.
I'm treading very lightly because, yeah, you know, it feels like home to me. It's a really nice place to live. The my boys are super happy. They fitted in really well. Statistically, you know, Amsterdam is the easiest city in the world, #1 city in the world for children to integrate into. You know,
I thought you lived. I didn't think you lived in Amsterdam, did you?
Yeah,
you do. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, Amsterdam, but I work. If you had to ask my wife,
oh, you okay? Yeah.
I travel. Yeah, he's never at home. But yeah, we are working on you know, spending more time, working a bit smarter for now, to get to a point where I am spending more time at home. But yeah, I travel back and forth between the Netherlands and South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah. See, the thing I know, I talk with a couple of my friends here, and when I illustrate the things that I notice here, they go, "Wow, yeah."
Yeah.
Because it's normal to them. Like when you walk around here, especially this part of town, but even the other part of town's the same. I struggle to remember walking in a residential area in America, or in the UK, or Ireland, for that matter, and being able to look through the window into someone's house.
Well, you can't talk to me about that in South Africa. We've got all these walls and the electric fences.
Yeah, but here there's no net curtains.
No.
When I walk with you in a minute, and we walk through the residential area down there towards the train station, so you can go home. You can't help but when you're walking down the street and you turn your head, you're looking straight into somebody's living room.
And they're sitting at the table.
Open. Not every time, but maybe 5% of the time, someone's going to wave at you. They will interact with you.
It's super
can't
friendly.
imagine an instance of that happening in the UK, and that's not putting it down. It's just
it's an observation.
It's a cultural thing, I think. In the same way that, you know, when I used to travel to, I used to work when Fleet Street moved to Canary Wharf. I worked at the Mirror Group and taught all some like 4 newspapers there. Taught all the staff scanning, retouching, being creative with things like Illustrator, Quark Express, and InDesign just came in at the time, so I used to have to go there and teach them InDesign, and it used to freak me out that I'd be on the tube, I'd be on a mainline train, and then I'd get on the tube, and then I'd go to Canary Wharf, and then you get on another train, and not one person would even look at you in the eyes and even say hello. Not one. And then, so it's so easy to be judgmental about that. And then after I moved there, when I only travelled there,
but then you became
when you then do it, you're exactly the same, because you can't sit down and open up your heart and talk the same fucking story every day to a different person every day, because that's every day. So it's understandable why. And you then realise that it's not because they're cold and heartless. It's just that that's the environment, and you can't be sat there. Oh, because what do you do when you sit down next to somebody on a plane? You go, "Hey, what do you do?"
Yeah.
Like I've got different. You probably do the same, but I've got different things. And then I've got various things that I do when I.
Well, you walk in with the headphones on to start with, and then you decide whether you're going to take them off or not.
And then you decide. Yeah. I mean, my one always is normally, because I'm incapable of falling asleep in a car or on an aeroplane. So I have to do it drug induced.
Okay.
So when I formed that version of the company, this version of the company in Ireland, we started going to Australia, and so I went and did an Australian tour via Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, Australia, New Zealand and back, and we did that every 6 months for 5 years. So I did it 10 times.
That's mental.
And that's a long flight.
Yeah.
And So there was this wonderful little thing that I used to use when I had a cold so I could sleep, called Night Nurse.
Oh, yes.
In the UK.
Yes, yes,
These
yes.
little white and green capsules.
Yeah.
And, you know, you read the little piece of paper and it says you should take 2. I would take 6.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd have 2 just before I'm boarding.
Yeah.
Then I'd have 2.
You can't do that
just
this day and age. You'll be pickpocketed on the way off.
No. I'd have 2. I always had a window seat, always, so you're not interrupted. Would always wear a hoodie. So I'd have my headphones, noise cancelling headphones, hoodie that I could pull right over my head, tie it, and then I'd take 2 before the meal, 2 straight after the meal, and I'd be in a coma for the whole flight. And there was this one flight that I had where I was gutted that I couldn't get the window seat and I was on the aisle, and I just thought, how am I going to make it from Dubai to Brisbane on the aisle seat? It was, my whole world had fallen apart, literally, because I thought, if I don't sleep all the way, I'll end up killing somebody, you know, it will be... So I popped the pills, and the couple next to me are watching me, and we were eating the meal, and I just, oh yeah, hi, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I'm going to sleep now, so I pull up my hoodie, and I said, look, I'm just going to get a nap, so just walk over me if you can, or push through me, but you probably won't wake me up. And they looked at me and went, what? So straight after the meal, the 4 pills have already kicked in, so, and the aisle is here, right, so I'll turn this way, so the aisle is here. And I'm on the seat, and so I've turned like this to the side, and I've got my hoodie closed like this, and the couple are over there, and here's the aisle, and the aisle's really narrow, right? Yeah. And so I fall asleep, and then I wake up, and I think, I've only been asleep for 5 minutes, so I did that child thing that kids do, and I go, oh, are we here yet? Yeah. Are we there yet? And the guy said, yeah, the wheels have just come down, we're landing. This was 12 hours later.
Oh my God.
And I went, what? And he said, it's good to see you move. And I went, what? And he said, they thought you were dead because my head had slipped.
Stayed in it.
And when it's all dark, this air hostess with the trolley had hit me straight in the face.
And you didn't budge.
I didn't murmur, I didn't move, I didn't flinch or anything. And he said they checked your pulse and they just pushed you back. Everything was fine, but you didn't wake up, and everybody's staring at you and stuff. And but it's the only way to get there. It's brilliant. The only problem is when you the lasting effect is you're a bit drowsy afterwards, and going through Australian immigration when you're fundamentally on drugs and you can't speak properly half the time, and you're very slow in your answers. So a couple of times I got interviewed, and that was an interesting experience, but it's fantastic for sleeping. It's the only thing I can do. But yeah, they thought you were dead. Oh, it's cool. But it's cool. It's cool. So how long do you think this will continue, this travel and work photographer balance thing for you? Is it a long-term thing, do you think?
Well, there's 2 schools of thought that it's like, do you ride the wave? Or do you...
To the extinction, you mean, to the end?
Yeah, or do you look for alternatives? And at the moment, I think, I've got 2 teenage boys who really need me to be at home in terms of boundaries and being a dad, and I need to be there too to see their failures, their achievements, and all of that. I need to be there for that. But there's a strange conflict there, because when you say how long will it last, I never thought I'd be as privileged as I am to be in this position. So it's kind of like a catch-22 where you say, well, I never thought I'd live this life. But then, I think I will carry on teaching and traveling as long as I remain relevant. Right. I don't want to be teaching people to do things that are not working and that are not, that are not relative to what the market is dictating. And fortunately, I'm still in that position where, what I'm doing does work, and it's still very rewarding for me. To be able to fundamentally change someone's life, and it's not every time, but to have the ability to change somebody's life is so rewarding for me. And I'm not really a deep person, so if my wife is watching, she'll know what I'm talking about here. I'm really not that deep, but when I stopped drinking, I kind of made a deal with the greater power, God, Allah, karma, whatever you want to call it.
Whoever's listening.
Basically, the deal is that I will feed the good wolf in return for you giving me another chance. So, I mean, we've all made, in the heat of a moment, prayers or deals with whoever you talk to. Just do this, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to be good.
Right.
And kind of I've stuck to that. So for me, not that it's a burden in any way, but it's my duty to give back in a positive way, because I have been. I should either be dead or in jail right now, and for me this is really. But no, I'm in Utrecht with you. I don't know what's worse.
Yeah, someone else who would say exactly the same thing.
Yeah, but yeah, it's whilst I still have the ability to do good, that's cool for me, and I would like to have more time with my family, more time with my wife, but everyone has that in their. I mean, I was doing a workshop in Dubai, teaching wedding photography, and this guy sitting in the audience or as a delegate, and he's looking at my work and he's looking at where I've been and what I do, and he's like, "Wow!" And I said to him, like, "What are you going on about?" He said, "Wow, you got such a cool job." And I said, "Well, I just do what I do. It's not, I don't think it's extraordinary. I like what I'm doing." But I don't think it's like, wow, such a cool job. I said, but anyway, what do you do? No, I've got a boring job. I said, what do you mean you've got a boring job? He says, no, I've got a boring job. I just sit around all the time. I said, come on, what do you do? He said, no, I fly the A380. I'm like, that's a cool job. But
everything's relative.
Everything's relative.
Yeah.
He didn't dislike it. He thinks it's a nice thing to do. But for him, that's normal.
Yeah, but that's the human condition, isn't it? It's always, the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my grass is pretty green, but I would like more. I would like more time to spend at home. But maybe for selfish reasons, and you can relate to this, the rush of having an influence in somebody else's life also drives me.
Yeah.
It's a really cool feeling.
I think it's the expectations. I suppose when you're young, I remember I had no expectations with growing up. Really, my expectations would have been very negative. You would have dreams, like I dreamt I wanted to be a footballer. I could have been a footballer in a heartbeat. Could have been, just never panned out that way, for various reasons, and there were reasons, I think. But my outlook was, when around the 15, 16, it was certainly go to further education and have another 4 years of this. Seriously, what? Yeah. What? So got to find a job. So just at 16 went straight into work. And if somebody had, I mean, I think because of the who I was at that time, I was heading for jail, I thought. I thought, not because I was a bad person, it's just that my reaction to things would have been disproportionate to the event, let's just say.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up getting into more trouble than the situation deserved, because my response would be, well over the top.
Yeah.
And so so it would have been very much, I never believed I would live past 30. I never believed I would ever live past 30, because if you put a dangerous choice in front of me,
that's what
I would take it. Without even considering it. I wouldn't consider the things that I have done, where if I'd have died, I mean, they're too many to even begin to remember. So I know that all my lives, if I probably have one left, and I'm looking after that one.
Yeah.
Just the most ridiculous choices. Because it was just kamikaze. It was just, well, there's no plan, and you think you're immortal, and what's the worst thing can happen is you're just not here, and if you don't have a great thing that you're working towards, or you don't have a long-term positive picture in your head of how happy you could be, how content you could be, and stuff. It's easy.
And how much of an influence you can have on other people's lives.
Yeah, and it's like, I can't deceive in a sense. I mean, there are certain aspects of the business at the moment that are really challenging, and responding to emails is one of them. Okay, it's sometimes I go through periods where I do them. Now I've actually installed help now, so I have somebody who does it. But there would have been periods of time they wouldn't get done, and that would really piss people off, because they wouldn't be able to get into the website.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't get a response, and it might take 6 weeks. It might never happen. And then
they were entitled to.
Yeah, and then because they're desperate to be on it, and because they want to be on it. It's a part of their. It's normal for them to be on it, and then it's for whatever reason the resubscription didn't go through or whatever, and it would need to be manually dealt with in the database or something. So these glitches happen, and so the first email is a really stressed one because I haven't responded. I wear that. I'm responsible for that stress, so I have no problem with that. I eventually then fix the problem, and then there'll be 2 or 3 emails that go backwards and forwards. The final email, 80% of the time, is thanks so much for fixing it. I'm so sorry that I'm so sorry that I was so tetchy or I was so aggressive. I'm sorry that I was aggressive. I caused that to happen. They're sorry, and I can't thank you enough for what you do. I wouldn't have the business that I have right now if I didn't learn what I learned from you. Now, whether that is true or untrue, it doesn't matter. That person writes that voluntarily. There's no gun to the head. How many times does an executive at Nike ever read a complimentary email that comes from a person who loves their latest running shoes? Never. Yeah. And so when they come in, they're the grounding moments. They're those moments that when I struggle at times, and sometimes I do, like everybody, you only got to get one of those, and it just resets. It just resets, because that's why you do it. I need to do so many things better than what I've been doing, but that was the whole point of coming here, to do them better, and I am doing them better. Maybe not as quick as some people would like, but
at least you acknowledge it, and you're addressing it.
I'm trying.
Because
all you can do is keep trying.
Yeah, and so many people don't acknowledge it, and let ego get in the way. So
but that just one line can be, keep up the work. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep bringing more of what you're doing, and there's no bigger compliment.
And mate, you also have to think about the fact that you could be inspiring other people not only through what you do, but through the fact that you looked at your own personal health and you changed things there, and other people can look at you and look at that as inspiration. It happened to me at a conference where I gave this talk, and I thought it was I thought I'd smashed it, right? I thought I absolutely nailed it in terms of inspiring people to go and take better wedding photography and to run their businesses differently. And 4 years later, somebody said to me, "Oh, I heard you speaking at a conference 4 years ago, and it changed my life." And I said, oh, that's cool. Like, what business strategy did you implement that, you know, worked? And I'm happy that it worked. He said, no, it had nothing to do with photography. I had been going through a really shit period at the time, and I was drinking way too much. And you standing on stage telling me your story inspired me to stop drinking, and I haven't had one sip for 4 years. I'm like, whoa, that's just too much for my head. You know, so...
No, but that's actually much more important than the photography.
Yeah, it is.
It's much more important. I mean, like when I had my little cathartic moment when I was Mr. Blubber and I was huge, and that was for many reasons. I was just in quicksand in life at that time, and just eating sugar and crap.
And the wrong times of the day and all that kind of stuff.
No exercise, no nothing, and just going pop, 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 pop. And I was 15 and a half stone.
Speak English? Oh, that is English.
Yeah, that is English.
Speak decimal.
That's I think that's 100 kilos or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's scary for me in my frame. I'm Mr. Spider-Man, skinny person. And I was 15 and a half stone, and there's 14 pounds to a stone, and I was 4 stone overweight.
That's a lot.
As a percentage. 4 of 14 as a percentage is a lot.
Yeah.
And when I went through the change, and I changed in one moment, it was a critical mass. I'd done lots of watching various documentaries on food, exercise, and various bits and pieces, as I would anyway. And they all nudge you closer. You don't know you're being nudged closer to a finite point, but you just get nudged closer. And then I watched this one video. There was nothing in it that was new. I just watched this personal story. That
sugar movie?
No, it was the one that was called Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen that one? It's a stunning...
Sick and Nearly Dead.
It's called Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead. Right. And it is a fantastic documentary of an Australian entrepreneur, multi-millionaire businessman flying between Australia and New York or America all the time. And just... huge person, because of the lifestyle, you know, gluttony and, you know,
excess.
Debauchery, excess, and everything. And he was on, as many people confine themselves on. He developed a skin or a physiology problem. He had a medication for that, and then another medication for the side effects for the first one, and was in this thing. And he had, and he showed the amount of pills he was taking on a daily basis, and 90% of them were to combat the side effects from the first one. And that's a good idea. And he just went, this can't be right, you know. And that's why he did this documentary, Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, because he saw himself as like you or me, and there's nothing good that's going to come from this path, and only I can change it. And all you can do is allow yourself to be influenced by other people. And I think if you're an influencer, I was a stupid influencer, because I would refuse to allow myself to ever be influenced by anyone. I mean, anyone. And that is only up until quite recently, in the last few years. And so it's a major about change for me, to allow myself to be open to being influenced, just allowing that to happen. And
how's that working out for you?
Oh my God, I just wish I could have met me 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Yeah. And so when I then went on the NutriBullet, there's a NutriBullet in there.
Oh, yes,
I live on those things. I go from time to time where I'll just live on those for a month. 4 friends had one of those within... when they saw the results. And then I could then regurgitate what I'd learned. Then it's really weird to say, it's just that, you see, I don't read books, and I never knew I knew what YouTube was, but I never watched a movie on YouTube up until about a year ago, maybe 14 months ago. Because I put my movies on my platform, and if you want it, you come to me. That's it. I don't put myself in a marketplace, and I don't want it diluted. It's you want to come to me. It's a deliberate act. You come to me, and that's fine. So all my free publishing, you know, the Fuse, the Focus, all the things that we do, it's always on my website. Always on my website. And then I started watching YouTube, because I'm, you know, moved here, don't understand local TV, so I might want to watch a film or something. So. So there's no TV. So I went on YouTube and then started finding
It's a
some
whole
of the
new
medical.
world.
Oh my God! So I've wanted to do a podcast for the last 6 years. It was in my head before I even knew that they were even on there. I wanted to do this 6 years ago, before I'd even seen one of these. And then every time I saw one, I was thinking, oh God, I should have been doing that ages ago. I should have been doing that ages ago. Yeah. And then started watching Joe Rogan, who I like very much, not necessarily only because of him. He's an entertaining guy and very knowledgeable and quite inspiring, really. But it's the guests. And you asked me about the keto diet today. Yeah. I'll send you a link. I watched it today while I was doing the housework. Okay. I put on podcasts that I want to just listen to again so I get the reinforcement of the facts. And he'll get these like extreme medical professionals who are at the forefront of the research of all this stuff come on and just chat for 3 hours, and I will just watch it every frame with a notepad. And whatever I usually do and I adopt for myself, it through osmosis will just spread to the people around you. And that's what we do. You know, this is only really, in all honesty, the second time I've met you. I mean, we met at that show. We just said hi. We never talked at the show. Remember recently? Yeah. But
that show. Sorry, I didn't even remember that you were there.
Yeah, because you were doing. You were coming on and you went straight into work. So now I just said hello. Yeah. But it's certainly the second time I've had a conversation with you, and you've said, I think 3 things that will resonate with me. That I watch you in the way that you verbalize and you visualize your business, which, I need to be doing a bit more of that. You know, but it's not because I'm sitting here going, please teach me, please influence me. It comes naturally, and as long as somebody is offering themselves in a very organic way, and it's not that you have to do this and you have to copy.
But now that you're verbalizing that, I wish all teaching could be like that.
It's the best teaching.
Yeah, but the problem with the society these days is everything needs to be done within the first 15 seconds, otherwise you've lost the attention span of people.
Well, I think that's what you would be led to believe. My argument with that, or my solution to that, is I don't want them to be a customer. If I'm going to lose someone's attention in 15 seconds, good luck, go somewhere else. I'm not interested.
Even if it could have benefited them.
That's not your choice. It's not my responsibility. Okay. My responsibility is the person who decides to join. Yeah. And it's my responsibility to help them because they're joining because they want help. Now, I fail at that sometimes as a percentage. In terms of how much I used to fail was huge when I was at the end of my time in Ireland. It just ground to this sticky, horrible, non-moving anything. And it's just gradually increasing and it's getting better as I'm getting better.
But now you're doing it for the right reasons.
But that's the whole point. You see, doing it only to make money and only to pay rent, I can't do that. I would be happy to sleep under a bridge. I'd be happy to do that. I don't think I would choose to do that, but if I found myself in that circumstance, I wouldn't think...
Like the guy on the boat today.
Yeah, oh man,
that's
that guy
cool,
on
right?
the boat. Oh, fuck. Yeah. So, but now it's got to be for the right reasons, and you've got to, if you want to get there, instead of just staring at it and thinking, just keep moving, you have to think about the first step, and then the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. Just think of the next step, that's all. And it's, to me, it's about the framework, and it's the foundation you build to get there, because if you don't think about how solid the ground is under your feet, by the time when you get there, it can be gone. And I'm not interested in that anymore. I don't want to build something for it to fail again because I got there for the wrong reasons. It has to be slowly, surely. Just accept your weaknesses, your failings. Also do what you're good at. And just let the pendulum then come back.
That's maybe one thing that I've learned in terms of accepting your failings and your weaknesses. I think society spends way too much time worrying about weaknesses, and I think people should just amplify their strengths.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something about feeding white ones, isn't it, really? It's just like we've got everything, but the one that's going to grow the most is the one that we focus on and feed. Yeah. And it's a choice you make every day. And that was the other thing I learned from somebody else. You see, another thing I learned from somebody else. I would never have been able to have said that 18 months ago. Okay. And this person is actually really, has proven to be a really important person. And whereas I used to be very binary, like you are with alcohol. You decided one day you was going to give up, and you've had to give up. To me, I used to always be, right, I'm going to run every day 10 miles. And I would do it every day until the day I didn't. And then because I failed one day, I'd never do it again.
I understand.
That kind of thing. And because why set goals? Why create a statement and set a goal for the rest of your life which is impossible to realize? And she just said to me, she said, why not make your goals for one day in the morning, and then make the same goal the next morning, and make the same goal the next morning.
But that's Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's
just for today.
That's Buddhism.
Yeah.
Do you know where it comes from? Do you know what I mean? That's where it comes from. And, just set a goal for today.
Yeah, just for today.
And just achieve that goal. And then if you like what you did today, do the same thing tomorrow. Don't say you're going to do it forever, because you can't ever.
That's impossible.
You can't.
And if you do fail, then accept it and realize you've got a new chance tomorrow.
So and I do that with my diet. I do it with the exercise, because I have a day, and because there's a fantastic burger bar down there.
I saw.
On my Best Burger, it's called, and it is not lying. It is amazing. Yeah. And it is the worst thing I found on my new walk to work from home, because I walked past this temptation, which is a nightmare. 99, out of a month, 28 days, 27 days of the month, I have the strength and resolve to say none of that in my life. But if I don't have the best of days, or particular things go the way they do, the moons align, I'll go in there and I'll have one, and I will hate myself for doing it. I'll enjoy every mouthful. I'll enjoy every mouthful, and I'll really enjoy it. I'll hate myself for doing it, but it won't stop me. It won't make me then go and do it every day for the next 6 months and become Mr. Blubber again. All I'll do is I'll just say, okay, well then tomorrow I won't.
Yeah, but it is about balance, and I'm the wrong person to be saying that. I'm telling you what my wife would say. Yeah,
but you wouldn't do yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't say, oh, I'm going to have a drink today. No. Because there are some things you can't do.
Then I'd have to start counting again.
Well, see, that's why I won't have a coffee. Yeah, but I remember you said that, and that's why I don't. Because Kel, my partner here, he says, "Come on, coffee's not bad for you." And I say, "Well, we don't know. We've only consumed coffee to the degree that we have in my lifetime." Yeah. There was no such thing as cafes in the high street when I used to go shopping with my parents as an 8-year-old child.
No, it's this whole new coffee culture.
So in my lifetime. So there's not enough generations to have gone through evolution for us to know the effect of Wi-Fi, mobile phones, coffee, especially, we know sugar, right? And that's so there's so much stuff that's going on. We don't know. So I would love to have a coffee. I want to get to the point where I will just grind the beans by hand.
But for me, it's also the ritual.
Yeah, that's what I want. I love the smell. I love the taste. I just want to learn how to have one. I don't have that personality.
Yeah, I don't have that personality either.
If I had one, I'm going to have 4. And then the problem is, and then when I then give it up, I'm going to have to start at 0 again. And I don't want to start at 0. I've got 20 months.
I could have a drink right now, but I don't want to, because then I'm going to start counting it. So it's not a case of.
You're worried about becoming an alcoholic again.
No, not really. But to me also, it was never really about the taste. It was I drank to get drunk.
To dislocate.
Yeah, perhaps, but it was to get drunk. It wasn't to. It wasn't to have. It wasn't social. It was really a means to an end. Yeah. Yeah. But what I like about conversations like this is that everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got their crosses to bear, and I think it's like we said, it's all relative. Some people's reality to us might seem, a bit. If I had to be judgmental, I'd say, well, that's a little bit pathetic, or wow, they've got a really hard life. But to them,
Yeah.
You know, it's...
The reason I decided to do this was the most interesting conversations at all the gigs that I used to do and all the talking that I used to do. All the best conversations happened at the end.
Yeah.
You know, you do your work for the day, because it's a whole day presentation always for me. And then
a whole day of Photoshop.
Oh yeah, man! When I would go to Australia, I'd work for 18 hours. I would do a whole day.
Yeah.
Then I would rush to a camera club or a camera association or a university and do an evening seminar, and then have a meal, go to bed, get up and do the same thing again for 3 weeks straight without a day off or 1 day off, and then go somewhere else and do it again. But yeah, I can't remember now what the point was we were talking about. Damn, that always happens.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
But the best conversations happen.
No, the best because you do what you do. In you giving your information and telling your story, somehow a connection is made.
Mm.
A number of people just get up and say thank you and they goodbye. But a good number of people, as you know, they stay and they want to talk to you. And what dawned on me was that you know, let's just pretend it's you. So you've stopped and you've waited in line to have your chance to say hi, thank you, have a question or whatever. Yeah. But you'd be surrounded by other people, and they would never join in the conversation because they're just earwigging what we're doing. They're just watching. That's no different than watching this conversation on YouTube. And it just dawned on me that that conversation that 20 people are listening to, it's not a two-way occurrence. This is a two-way occurrence, but there would be an audience to just this. You know what I mean? And so every single show, the interest in what happened afterwards was equal to, if not more, because they want to hear what your views are on a whole bunch of things, not necessarily only in the field that you're teaching.
Yeah, because what you're speaking about, you're in total control of. It might not necessarily be what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be helpful to them, but it might not be pertinent to their specific life.
Yeah.
You know, their working life or their...
Yeah. Absolutely. So I just thought, why not bring those conversations here so that we can just all show that we're all normal. There is no better or worse. It's just different. And the judgmental side that I think we've all had growing up. You know, within what is psychology? Within 3 seconds we can sum up.
Malcolm Gladwell. You read that book?
No. You can make a picture of somebody.
It's called Blink.
You can presume somebody's existence within 3 seconds or something, and you'll be 80% wrong, or you'll realise that 90% of everything that we do, we're all the same. Doesn't matter what we do for a living.
So many situations like that where I've judged, and then like half an hour later, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so wrong of me. Yeah. Anyway, dude. Cool.
I think we're going to call this episode 1. Thanks for coming, Mark.
Absolutely. I'm going to be back soon.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I think there is so much we can do.
It's really cool spending time with you.
And guys, if there's anybody still watching, excuse me.
Anybody still awake out there?
Yeah. This is a small one, actually. This has been 2 hours. The longest was last week. That was 2 hours and 35 minutes.
So now that's a challenge.
Oh, no, next time. Come on. Next time. We'll start earlier next time.
Yeah, life's not a competition, but...
Really? So look, thanks for coming, man.
Thank you very much.
We will do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
There's no easy way to end this, so I'm just going to end it.
All right.
See you later, guys. We'll see you next time. 1, 2, 5.